All right, let's get into one of Canada's most chilling and, honestly, most baffling legends. It's this incredible story of survival, a brutal manhunt, and a ghost of a man who literally vanished into the snow, leaving behind a name that wasn't even his, and a mystery that's still unsolved almost 100 years later.
So, take a look at this guy. This is the man they called Albert Johnson. After this massive, insane manhunt across the frozen north, he was finally cornered and killed. But you know what? His death wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. It was really just the beginning of the mystery. Who was he?
So our story kicks off in the absolutely bleak wilderness of Canada's Northwest Territories. We're talking the Great Depression here, a time and a place that drew a lot of desperate men. But the one who showed up in the summer of 1931? He was different.
He gives his name as Albert Johnson. But when the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, try to talk to him, he gives them basically nothing. He's clean-shaven, seems to have a surprising amount of money, and just keeps to himself. Now, in a tight-knit place like this, his refusal to get a trapping license, that was a huge red flag. It was the first sign that this was a man who was determined to live completely outside the rules.
And things just escalated with terrifying speed. Okay, so local trappers complain he's messing with their traps. The RCMP visit him on Boxing Day. He says nothing, just stares at them. 5 days later, New Year's Eve, they come back with a warrant. An officer tries to force the door, and Johnson just shoots him. The police response? They lay a full-on siege with dynamite. And incredibly, the guy survives the blast and starts shooting back from a hole he dug under his cabin.
So yeah, what started as a simple trapping dispute had just exploded into a war. News of this shootout crackled across the world on the radio, and suddenly the hunt for the mad trapper of Rat River was on. It became this huge media circus, a modern manhunt playing out in an ancient frozen landscape.
I mean, just look at the sheer scale of the effort to get one guy. You've got 9 men, 42 dogs, 20 pounds of dynamite, all of this happening in 40 below weather. They besieged his cabin for 15 hours, and he still fought them off. It's unbelievable.
So here you can see the determined Mounties who were on this hunt. And right next to that, the smoking ruins of the cabin they just blew up. They thought for sure they had him. But when they rushed the wreckage, he opens fire from that pre-dug pit under the floor. And then, using a blizzard for cover, he just vanished.
This is where it all changed. This wasn't about a trapping dispute anymore. When the posse finally caught up to Johnson again on January 30th, he didn't surrender. No, in the firefight, he shot and killed Constable Edgar Millen. The manhunt was now for a cop killer, and you better believe the RCMP was not going to stop until he was brought down. But here's the thing. Catching Johnson seemed absolutely impossible. He wasn't just some guy on the run. He was like a force of nature, perfectly at home in this brutal landscape. He moved like a ghost through the Richardson Mountains, a terrain that should have killed anyone else. To get out of the territory, Johnson had to cross the mountains. So the RCMP, thinking logically, they blocked the only 2 known passes. They figured they had him trapped. So what does Johnson do? He climbs the 7,000-foot peak in the dead of winter and disappears over the other side. The local Gwich'in hunters, the people who knew that land better than anyone, said that was completely impossible. But he did it. And his mastery of bushcraft was pure genius. To hide his trail, he would walk right in the tracks of caribou herds down the middle of frozen rivers. Now, this not only hid his footprints from the posse on the ground, it also made him pretty much impossible to spot. He was using the wilderness itself as a weapon against a modern police force. Johnson's incredible skills kept him alive for over a month, one step ahead of everyone. But the 20th century was about to catch up to him in a way he could have never seen coming. The posse was exhausted, they were frostbitten, and they were being consistently outsmarted. They were losing him. So in a total last-ditch effort, they made a call that would change everything. They brought in a whole new eye to the hunt. They hired Wilfred Wap May, a legendary flying ace from World War I. He shows up in a ski-equipped plane, this piece of modern technology that must have seemed like something from another planet in this primal landscape. And suddenly, you've got the ultimate showdown, the frontiersman versus the machine. Because from the air, that clever caribou track trick was useless. Wap May easily spotted the faint trail leading from the riverbank to the trees where Johnson had camped. He guided the posse right in, and they finally closed the trap. The month-long 150-mile chase ended right there, in a fatal shootout on the frozen Eagle River. The mad trapper was dead. The chase was over. But when the Mounties finally examined his body, the story took this sharp, strange new turn. The real mystery, it turns out, was just getting started.
Okay, so these are some of the items they found on him. The survival gear, the compass, the knife, the fishhooks, that all makes sense. But the rest of it was weird, deeply puzzling. He had a fortune in cash on him, and his teeth had expensive, really high-quality gold dental work. This was not your typical down-on-his-luck trapper. Not at all.
And let's just put that money into perspective. The $2,000 they found on him back in 1932, today that would be worth over $47,000. So why was a man with that kind of money hiding out in a remote cabin in the middle of the Arctic?
And for decades, the theories just swirled. Was he Arthur Nelson, some prospector who used similar guns? Maybe John Johnson, a career criminal from North Dakota? Or even a guy named Sigvald Hajgold, a draft dodger who had also built himself a fortress-like cabin? Every single lead turned out to be a dead end.
Then, fast forward to 2007. A team actually exhumes his body, hoping modern science can finally solve this thing. Isotope analysis of his teeth confirms what they suspected. He probably grew up in Scandinavia or the American Midwest. But it wasn't until 2021, using really cutting-edge DNA sequencing, that investigators got their biggest break yet.
That DNA traces his family history to a very specific region in Sweden. The net is closing, linking him to the descendants of just a few families from a handful of small Swedish towns. After all these years, it looks like science might finally give a name to the phantom of Rat River. But, the central question still remains. What on earth drove a seemingly well-off man to hide at the edge of the world and declare a one-man war on the law? That's a secret he took to his grave.